Good evening and welcome to the March 25th, 2024 legislative session of the Salisbury City Council. In the event of an emergency, please remain calm and exit through the double doors to my left. If those doors are blocked, please exit through the door to my right by pulling the fire alarm located to the right of the door under the monitor. Please let us know if you need any assistance. Public comments will be heard on any item at the end of this agenda. Please complete a form from the table where you entered and give it to the city clerk. You will have 4 minutes for each comment. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Greg Morris of Parkway Church of God will now provide the city invocation. Welcome, Pastor Morris.
Thank you so much, President Doughty. We appreciate the opportunity again to come to represent people of faith and pray for our city. This is something that I do regularly, not just for this platform, but in many other ways I pray for our city. But thank you again as we pray for what God can do for us. Our great God and Heavenly Father, we come before you in humble request, acknowledging that in all of the benefits of life, you are our benefactor. Life's greatest treasures are found in you. We recognize that the greatest gift, in my opinion, ever given is what we as Christians celebrate this week, Passion Week. When we acknowledge the death, the burial, and the resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ. It was during this week 2,000 years ago that followers of Jesus were met with emotions that went from exhilarating to exhausting, and then to a place where it was presumed that the movement was extinguished. And much like those disciples, God, we find ourselves in life running on emotional fatigue. Our sins do so easily beset us, and we struggle daily with the duties that life brings us. Sometimes our fear center fires up, creates a hypervigilance within us, and restlessness and anxiety put us on guard, and our ability to regulate mood and emotion, to calm ourselves and reason to think and make intelligent decisions are altered as a result. Simple tasks can feel challenging, to which we wonder, where can we go for assistance? Jesus said to his followers, after he was removed from the cross, placed in the grave, and resurrected, behind a locked door, peace be with you. It's my prayer, God, that you would just continue to bring peace in all that we do. The tasks before our city sometimes seem to be generalized and may be minimized, but their significance begins to impact generations and generations to come. We know that the promise of Scripture is that we can come to you, and so we ask you, the God of the resurrection, to open doors and bring life to those things that honor you and make our city greater still. Bless all of those that are involved in the leadership decisions that will make for better citizens. And we believe that you have a far better life than we can ever live on our own. So we inquire you that you would meet all the needs that our city government requires to govern our city well. Thank you for your provision. Thank you for your promises. Thank you for your pardon. And we are forever blessed as we acknowledge you. We present this prayer to you in the precious name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Morris. Could I have a motion and a second to adopt the legislative agenda?
So moved. Second.
Michelle, April motion, Michelle second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Could I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Good
e-
evening.
Good evening, Kim.
On the consent agenda tonight, we have the March 4th, 2024 work session minutes, closed session minutes number 1, closed session minutes number 2, and closed session minutes number 3. We have the March 11th, 2024 council meeting minutes, closed session minutes number 1 and number 2. Resolution number 3336, approving the reappointment of Nestor Bleach to the Revolving Loan Advisory Committee for term ending March 2028, and resolution number 3337, approving the appointment of Bill Wolf to the Public Art Committee for term ending March 2027.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we appreciate Nestor Bleach and Bill Wolf for their continued commitment to the city. And seeing we do have a couple, moving on to the public comments portion of the meeting, I'd like to call Molly Hilligros to the stand. And if you just state your name and if you're a city resident.
Hi, I'm Molly Hilligas, and I am a city resident, and I also work in the city. I'm the executive director of Habitat for Humanity of Wycomico County. And as I was looking at the agenda today, and I noticed Nestor Bleach being reappointed to the Loan Advisory Committee, I did a little research and found that the loans are only for business loans. And so with that, as our population ages, this poses a problem that few are talking about. Where will our seniors go when they can no longer maintain their homes and are on very limited fixed incomes? We must make critical home repair a focus of our mission and talk about the need for our local governments to help us find resources so that our veterans and older adults can reside and age in a place they call home. Recently, the City of Salisbury conducted an analysis for the Community Development Block Grant Cycle. I've attached, and I'll have a copy of this for the minutes. I've attached a copy of the table of contents and the executive summary for reference. A key finding is that the housing stock in the city is older and in need of rehabilitation. So my comments are related to this aspect in that document as well. So when residents need a home loan to purchase or to refinance or for home improvement, they obviously apply at banks and mortgage brokers. These financial institutions are required to disclose certain information annually. The Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, or HMDA for short, requires lenders to provide details about the applications for those home loan requests. Banks and lenders are then required to provide the information by address. And so in the document that the city provided, which is the 2024 analysis of the impediment to fair housing choice, on page 96, it outlines the number of loans originated, which means loans funded, applications approved but not accepted, applications denied by the financial institution, applications withdrawn by the applicant, and then the file closed for incompleteness, and applications received. So what is in there that I thought was shocking was that 96 households in the city of Salisbury tried to get home improvement loans in 2022, but were denied. So they tried. When you drive around and you see homes that need repair, there are a lot of families that are trying. The average loan request was $75,641. So if those 96 households had been able to receive the home improvement loan that they needed, that would have generated $7.26 million back into our economy here. Sadly, that lost opportunity of the households that were denied home improvements creates despair for those that need a new roof, a new HVAC system, or even a walk-in shower. Real property values of homes with deferred maintenance create problems not just for families that reside in those homes, but also for the state, counties, and municipality. A decline in a home's value impacts family wealth and the ability to move on to other housing when they need to downsize or divest due to age-onset medical issues. that might make them want to find a smaller home or a home that doesn't require outdoor maintenance. I'm going to skip down to some other parts here. Currently in Wycomico County, the census data shows that vacant homes now have reached a record of 10% of all homes. As you drive around, it's common to see abandoned homes in disrepair. 22% of all households now are age 60 and up. The city of Salisbury needs a low barrier, revolving critical home repair loan fund, just like it has a revolving fund for businesses. Governments cannot rely on nonprofits to fix this problem. It is now at a crisis stage. Okay, I would also like to point out that in the documents of the analysis of the impediments to fair housing choice, City of Salisbury has decided not to apply for home funds. Home funds are monies allocated by the federal government that flow from HUD to the states. The state of Maryland receives approximately $10 million each year. On page 68 of that analysis, while the home program is listed as an opportunity, the city states it has no current plans to apply for these funds, not now and not in the next 5 years. So I ask why? We are in the middle of a housing crisis and the city is just going to pass over on these funds? I would like the administration to calculate the return on investment of this opportunity. Building housing is an immediate economic driver to the economy. If the grants manager doesn't have time to monitor this grant, perhaps the city's economic development director would find the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And you will appreciate an item that we will be adding to this special work session tonight, Ms. Hilligros. Thank you for your comment. Nathan Cox?
Hello again. I intended on coming in 2.5 weeks ago, but life happens. In November 2009, after my parents lived in their house for 12 years, they were subject to have to leave their house because of flooding. And let's see here, within the next 8 years, their house got flooded 3 more times. And they after the 4th time, they said, we're done, we gotta just sell this place, we can't keep leaving, remodeling, and going back and forth. Now, a dozen years later, this is their house after they sold it, and, it got raised up. It's even worse than it was before. So, and with the current administration, there was a fight back and forth. Who is to blame, the county or the city or the railroad? No one knows. And it was an embarrassment, and it almost felt like we were being spit upon verbally, but we're not going to go into that. I just want to say, originally this was supposed to be a major complaint over the flooding issue. And obviously 2.5 weeks ago, a lot of people, probably several hundred people in Salisbury, were complaining about the my parents' house's intersection being flooded, the corner of Middle Neck Lane, Priscilla Street, and the highway. Major detour situation. But of course, after the article here, I have to say thank you instead of complaining. More of a preemptive thank you that hopefully Mayor Taylor will be taking care of the situation finally after more than a dozen years, 14 years later, almost 14 and a half years later for us to finally take care of the flooding situation at that intersection. I really hope it gets taken care of this time. Because I'm sure after 12 floods later and 14 years, closing off that road, just wanted to toss it out there. Thank you, and I hope things get done.
Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
And I do acknowledge that we do have a few comments from the online portion. We will get to those after these here. Robert Taylor.
Good evening, Robert Taylor, Salisbury resident. I want to burn some of my time by, first of all, repeating, I think, what the gentleman said, and complimenting Mayor Taylor, and incidentally, we're not related, I'm much better looking, for what has happened controlling the flooding situation on Route 13. This shows you the difference when you have a mayor that doesn't have a lot of initials after his name from fancy universities, but, you know, has had the School of Hard Knocks and has had to make a living. You can see the difference in this mayor and our former mayor. Look how little time it took for him to create a situation that had been hang fire for, what, 10, 12 years. It's amazing. I want to burn a little bit more of my time just to point to my hat and say we had 4 national champions in the NCAA wrestling this weekend. I think that's a record. Penn State has also won 10, I think it is, of the last 12. We're now competitive with UCLA under John Wooden in basketball for national championships within a period of time. So you got to be happy about something. I think I told you last week we're going to make history. A couple of things real quickly. I know there's been, and I'm going to further expound upon this TIF situation, but you may have heard there's been publicity, I think, on some of the news media about what's happened up in Cambridge, about a project there that has been proposed for TIF. The city manager at Cambridge has resigned over that because he feels that it's just a ridiculous project. I'm going to be checking. I happen to have done some work for the current mayor of Cambridge a couple years ago and know him, but I haven't called him, and just see what the situation. I suspect they're being prospected by the same group of people who are prospecting here from Unicap. They're all over. I mean, it's like a plague. I'll give you in a minute probably a pretty good article. It was in the Eastern newspaper, which incidentally is the best newspaper on the Eastern Shore, one of the best newspapers I've ever seen in a small town, and that's where I've lived most of my life. So I'll give you that. I don't want to expound on that now, but I will later. But the main thing that brought me here tonight is the planning and zoning meeting from last week. I know Mr. Dowdy was there. He's a member. And I mean, I've been doing planning and zoning work for 50 years, and it is the most absurd meeting I've ever seen. No question barred. It seems like the city attorney who was there couldn't even find stuff in the code that I was referring to about the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission in parking in downtown Salisbury. I mean, it is incredible. You want to get the audio from that meeting and listen to it. I've never seen anything like it. And I've brought, incidentally, Mr. Dowdy, I've brought that section of the code, which she couldn't find.
I've read it.
And I'll give it to you. It's marked in yellow at the end. It's very clear. And I'll give a copy to Kim so she can pass it to anybody else in the council that might want to look at it. But I mean, folks, we got a lot of work to do. We're in very sad situation. Here you've got a project, and it's Mr. Dowdy's group, that is in the floodplain. It's entirely in the floodplain. Yeah, you can build it up, but how much sense does it make to do development in what is already in the floodplain, and we know it's going to get worse because of sea level rise and the fact that it's now well known that the east coast of the U.S. is actually sinking.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Subsiding.
Thank you.
And that's the same thing for the
Thank you so
Salisbury
much.
Town Center.
Thank you.
It's absurd.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Carolyn Wogelmuth.
No, thank you. I'm fine. No, I'm fine,
Use it for
sweetheart.
toilet paper.
It's yours.
You can use it for toilet paper.
Folks.
There you
just
go,
thank you.
sweetheart.
Thank you.
I don't want to touch her.
I got it here. I have it. I have a copy. All right. One more tree. Ms. Carolyn's.
My name is Carolyn Wolgemuth. I'm a resident within the corporate limits of Salisbury and therefore a city taxpayer as well. I have a lot of questions and concerns. Number one, why, over public objections, did City Council meet in a closed session on March 4th for 45 minutes with City Attorney Rena Patel regarding the LDA governing the proposed Salisbury Town Center development and the developer's circuit court appeal? And why was Mayor Taylor excluded from substantial parts of that meeting? Who excluded him? Citizens deserve an honest answer. Two, why, again, over public objections, did City Council meet in another closed session on March the 11th for nearly an hour with the same city attorney regarding what legal action the city might take on the developer's Salisbury Town Center litigation? Citizens deserve an honest answer. Three, why on March 14th did the city attorney file a court motion to reconsider a circuit court judge's decision dismissing the appeal of the developer's Salisbury Town Center litigation? Who authorized the use of taxpayer funds for the city attorney to file this motion that does not benefit the taxpayers, but rather supports the developer, who continues to be upset about the legal outcome? Citizens deserve an honest answer. The timeline of these events strongly suggests that the City Council orchestrated this questionable legal action during their recent 2 closed sessions. Furthermore, this is an executive matter, not a legislative matter for the City Council. The City Council and the developer's concerted efforts imply an ongoing illicit relationship that is at odds with city taxpayers, whom the City Council is supposed to represent. And now, shifting gears, I'd like to give a shout out to Mr. Tom Carroll, the Cambridge City Manager, for speaking out in the media regarding the dangerous use of a TIF as a financing vehicle for a development project in Cambridge. Concerned about the lasting and long-term negative effects for his city's taxpayers, he submitted his resignation this week rather than, as he put it, quote, sit back and watch the developer drive the car off the cliff, unquote. He supported his city's residents and taxpayers by refusing to back this financing scheme that he termed, and again, quote, a literal train wreck, unquote. This City Council should take note and stop putting developers' interests above the interests of citizens and taxpayers, the people that you're supposed to represent. I applaud Mr. Carroll as a prime example of an ethical civil servant serving his city's taxpayers. It is well past time for our City Council and administrator to put the interests of Salisbury residents and taxpayers over the special interests of greedy developers. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a online comment from Amber Green.
Good evening, everyone. I want to take the time to thank you for accepting my public comment. I do want to address an email that I had sent out earlier today regarding fair market rent, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of the City Council members in regards to the email that I sent out. I definitely want to say thank you to those who did respond. But I do want to use my time as the chair of the Truth Committee and let the public know, as well as the City Council members, that the Truth Committee will be hosting a workplace discrimination training that's open to the public. It's going to be Friday, April 26th at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is geared towards the public as well as those who have businesses, and we are looking to invite the City of Salisbury business owners as well as city employees, department heads to attend this training. It is very important, and we are definitely glad to have Jesse, who is our city liaison, part of this troop committee, who worked tirelessly to get this training coordinated with the Maryland Commission of Civil Rights Division, as they have been going through some administration challenges. And so being able to have a city liaison to coordinate that was definitely helpful, as it is true that our troop committee is looking forward to doing some action items for the community. And our first one would be that workplace discrimination training that is open to the public. And so I do want to give my time to say thank you to Jesse as well as to the rest of the city council members for their support in this committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Green. Any other public comments?
I do not have any more public comments. No more public comments.
Okay, great, thank you. And seeing none here, we will move on to administration and council comments. We'll start with you all.
Sure, just a couple things real quick. As I mentioned last time, on March 30th from 12 to 5, we're going to have our Spring Street event downtown. Looking forward to that first time event. So if you're not busy this weekend, come on out and support our local businesses. That's 12 to 5 in downtown right on Main Street. Second, to kind of emphasize a couple points I brought up tonight, we are looking forward to moving forward with the TIF policy that was brought up. We have a couple big projects that have been presented, but until we can adopt a TIF policy or set of guidelines to make sure that we are not only educated, but also thinking through our decision points. Both of those projects include a whole bunch of housing, and as we just talked about, fair market rents. To be able to manage rent, you need to have inventory, and to have inventory, you need to have more of it and more supply, and this, through a TIF, that may be an opportunity. So let's just make sure we really consider that as an option for growing our inventory. Yeah, I think that's it for tonight, and I'll turn the rest of the time over to the mayor.
Thank you.
Just a couple comments. I wanted to comment a little bit on Molly, her comments regarding home funds. I understand the SNHS maybe had applied for home funds as well. I don't know that for sure, but anything the city would, the city certainly would be interested, in my mind, if we capable of either applying for it or administering it, we would certainly be interested in doing that. I wasn't familiar with, has the administration in the past done it? I don't know. I don't know if they have or not. Okay. Because it's news to me. I'm not familiar with that program other than the mortgage world years ago. That was it. As it relates to, to the water problem we think we've solved. I did go out this weekend and checked all the locations, Northwood, Emerson. It looks like we've got really good flow. Nothing's backing up. So I think perhaps we've gotten to the source of that. So hopefully that's going to solve that problem. So that's all. Well, have a good Friday. Have a good Friday, I should say.
Thank you. Is there?
Got the clock on us, do you?
That's right.
You got the clock on?
No.
It's got the clock on us out there. All right, girl.
All
right, long-winded.
Mr.
Wasn't that long?
We're going to get into the chat. And we will start with Councilwoman DeShiel this time.
I have nothing to share tonight except thank you for the community and the people that are sitting in the blinding area over there for showing up and sharing your comments with us. We hope we will, move forward with suggestions and make a better place for all of us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Jackson?
Yes. I'd like to welcome everyone who brought their concerns to the council. We appreciate that. When you think we don't, your concerns, your questions, and your comments mean more to us than you really think they are. I know to me they do anyway. I can only speak for myself. And we thank you for coming and speaking out for the city and for the constituents and citizens of the city of Salisbury as well. I also like to invite you all to our National Vietnam Veterans Day, which will be held at the Wicomico County Memorial VFW Post 10159, 821 West Main Street, Friday at 6 p.m. It's a great event. We have speakers and we also have a repast of some food to follow. But it's a great event, and to hear the stories from the Vietnam veterans are really, heartening. It's breathtaking, for real. I mean, and some of them don't even want to tell their stories because they get so emotional. So it's something to see and something to hear, and we would like to have you come and be a part of that celebration. It's a National Vietnam Celebration Day. And also on Saturday, I will be hosting a community Easter egg hunt, which will be at 1117 Parsons Road, which will be at the village at Mitchell Pond. It's the Easter egg hunt. It's free to all. Everybody, please come out. Everything is free, free, free. So it is from 1 to 4, and the Vietnam Veterans Day program starts at 6 p.m. And our mayor says he would be there, so we're looking forward. And we have another, I think he's a department head of the state of Maryland, Joe Chipolo, who will also be there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We appreciate your efforts in the community. Councilwoman Gregory?
And on the subject of fair housing, Salisbury Neighborhood Housing Services is going to be hosting a 3-part series of fair housing seminar. You can learn a little bit more. That's on April 13th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and it's being held right at Station 16 on Cypress Street. So very, very well-timed conversation to have. And if you're looking for more information about fair housing or learning about it, that's a good source and a good training source. Just want to echo a reminder about the Downtown Salisbury Business Alliance spring event happening that got postponed, unfortunately, because of the weather on Saturday. I don't think it would have been a good time had by anybody out there if we had been out there Saturday. So I really encourage everybody to come out, support the businesses. It's still going to be a great time. It just got bumped forward a week. So,
Michelle,
yes,
what
ma'am.
time is that training?
The training is from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on April 13th. And it's the first of a 3-part series. Okay. So I'm not sure if they have the other ones up, but you can find the information on Facebook. There's an event up on Facebook that you'll be able to find an RSVP for.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gregory. Council Vice President?
Good evening. The sun is really shining. The spring is really here. It's a good time of the year. Just a couple things here. I want us to put on our work session or really figure out when we can squeeze it in, but the council has received a letter from Tidal Health from the CEO regarding some concerns with development, and there are pretty big concerns that were raised in that letter. I really want to talk about that. The other thing is the council has also received another letter regarding the River Mitch project, regarding on the city's intention of moving forward with that project, which is also an LDA that has been in the works. And I want to put that because we've received a letter from an attorney regarding the representation of the developers for that. So those are two things. Now I see tonight on our special work session agenda that we'll be talking about Lot 10. So there may come from that discussion other items that may be placed on the next work session or as soon as possible, all in the name of transparency, Mayor Taylor, so we can get things resolved as quickly as possible. The only other thing I would like to remind people of is if you are healthy enough, by all means, donate blood and be an organ donor. And you just never know if you or your family member or a loved one would need such items. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I believe I misspoke last meeting if I spoke about the Salisbury JC's adaptive Easter egg hunt is actually this Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. Again, that is for persons who need a specialized Easter egg hunt, adapted for those who are autistic or have other special needs. That's at the Fruitland Falcons field, and that's from 2 to 4 p.m. So I want to support the Salisbury JCs. They do a lot of good work in the community, and looking forward to that. I know we have a lot of events going on in the community. I might bring out my Easter bunny costume, so at least one of those there. Yes, so Council Vice President alluded to, we have a lot of things going on in the city. I know that a lot of concerned residents and do believe that your council and administration, we are trying to work together. We're trying to, acknowledge all the comments, concerns, and that anything we do is upheld by the standards. And even if you don't believe us, just trust that process. And if you want to know the reason why we made such decisions in the last meeting, which was a closed meeting, then you can certainly ask the reason why we made the decision to excuse the mayor. But we do look forward to, again, building a better Salisbury in that name for our residents. And I'll take that chuckle as a sign of agreeance there, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. That's one way of looking at it.
Mercy. And so with that, this meeting is now adjourned, and I'll now call a special meeting to order. The sole item, which we're going to add an additional item to this, is the Lot 10 sub-recipient agreement. Comments will be heard on this one item at the end of the council discussion. Please complete a new form at the table and then give it to the city clerk. And then we'll also, I wanted to add in, discuss forming a housing task force focusing on two things. One, our unhoused population and the affordability of rentals and homes in Salisbury. I want us to have a council discussion on that and then see about forming that task force in the very near future. So with that,
So moved.
Second.
thank you. And we'll look to administration for any comments on the Lot 10 sub-recipient agreement.
Okay. So, for a little bit of background, this topic's been around for some period of time. But essentially what it is DGS, Department of General Services, has sent the city a grant for $4 million in the form of two grants, $3 million and $1 million. And the grant is for a project, Lot 10, which is going to be a conference center and hotel. Nick Simpson, who I've met with, and we've discussed his budget relative to what he wants to use the funding for. So my challenge as the mayor and as a fiduciary for the city is to be sure that the institution of the grant, the implementation of the grant is done properly. So what I've been struggling with is to get somebody that's with DGS to help me kind of manage our grant, which we're the intermediary for, to put together this sub-recipient grant. So I met with Nick, and I had an hour conference call with DGS, and then I broke off with a half an hour meeting with Deirdre Bell, who's been with the agency for years and has implemented PAYGO grants all over through the state for years. So she gave me, based on the budget that Nick gave, gave me the restrictions on what the funding could be used for. And I can forward that email to you. I'm just looking for her to put it on her letterhead and just to confirm it, that we all understand it. Again, I'd love to see a conference center and hotel built in that section. And the question becomes with the funding that we've been given, how can we participate legally within the terms of the grant? Simple model, simple idea. So that's where I am. That's where I am. And I think we articulated everything we thought we can do with the grant. I sent that over to her. I'm asking her to respond affirmatively. That's the limitations of the grant. And then we'll work with Nick as to how we can or can't accommodate him in the ways he'd like.
How much was the grant for exactly?
Well, it's a total of $4 million, $3
And that's the
million and $1 million. So it's defined as an infrastructure grant. So it's so we're trying to get to the limits of what those infrastructure numbers look like. What is an infrastructure item? And now, if we don't spend all the money in one location, we can ask to repurpose it for other projects with permission, but whatever. So that's where we are.
So when and what, how did you become either skeptical or concerned about what the items may be used for? When did that come up in conversation?
Well, I mean, I think from the beginning, from what I heard from the beginning was that we were going to be funding what sounded like design costs, engineering costs related to the actual construction of the building, which to me didn't sound like infrastructure. You know, spent a long time in the lending business and had administered a lot of construction loans, so kind of knew the difference. But my point is that just kind of, so I was just trying to get comfortable with what the limitations of the grant were. So I reached out to DJS directly. The first couple times I was unsuccessful to try and get it defined for me. This last week I was able to do it.
So when do you expect, go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it.
When are you expecting, again, you said, and I believe at the last time I spoke to you last week, you said it was the same tone. What sort of timeline are you giving this person from DJS, and has she relayed how long it's going to take her to formally let you know of that?
Yeah, good question. I laid it out for her, and I sent Andy a copy of it, and I just said, hey, here's what I'm understanding you're saying. Confirm it by email, and so we can understand where we are.
So to ask you again, what timeline?
I'd like to think it'd be tomorrow, but maybe in the next couple of days. I mean, I don't know what her work schedule is or what her.
Is this the same grant that I questioned from the beginning? When I came, I think you were here when I questioned it, what could we use this grant for? Could we use it for other areas of the city as far as infrastructure? I did ask that question.
Well, I think.
And I was told, no, it was specifically for this.
So no, Mayor Taylor was not mayor then. I had just gotten appointed. I believe that was one of the first items.
I've asked since.
And you did, yeah. And
I've asked since then.
And you did ask that.
So I asked that same question. So
Okay.
the answer is that the grant was awarded on the basis of Lot 10.
Okay.
So that was the purpose of it.
Correct.
I'm talking a lot. I'll make sure I'm talking to the microphone. However, she said, well, you know, if we don't use it all up in that location, then for defined purposes that are prescribed in the grant, we can repurpose it, but we got to come back and say, hey, this fits the criteria of the grant in another project, whatever that looks like.
So do you anticipate this funding being more than sufficient to cover the
Yes,
costs that-
yes. Then the Lot 10?
Just to
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, because we's and they's does make, we need to clarify that.
Please.
If I want to take $2 million from the project and put it into a different project I don't get to, we have to make a recommendation to the state, and the state then gets to decide if they want to repurpose it for our project. Once we give back money, we may not get it back.
Right.
So just want to make sure that people are tracking that correctly. So if there is an opportunity with any sort of state funding that comes down, it is still a discussion, because that was given to and approved by legislatively for that project. So
Sure.
to repurpose it, there could be some strings attached to that. So
Is there something that you would like to use a portion of these funds for?
Nothing comes to mind, but I certainly we could surely find a place, I'm sure.
Because it sounds like, I think that the $4 million, I believe that could be allocated, just knowing what, and you do too, construction costs, that could certainly be used, and we did, go ahead.
having been around this table for a while now, the state is not going to fund day-to-day operation costs. This is an
Right.
investment into some large-scale project, typically when it comes to requests. So if we want to go pave some streets, we're probably not going to get it. So it'd have to be something that is some sort of capital request, something that we see as a high priority,
Right.
that also has some support from our local legislative body too. So we got to make sure we're not just thinking we've got $3 million to
No.
inject into an operating
And I don't think
expense.
council, I mean, we had this
Yep.
discussion
Yeah.
before, so I guess we're wondering, if we know that, well, if we knew that, we know that, why are we waiting for that answer yet again for the third time?
Yes.
If it seems like
That's
we're
what I was
almost.
getting at.
So again, given what, Mr. Kitchener just said, that again, we can't, if we want to possibly reallocate these funds, we have to speak back to that, to the state again. But we've been told in so few words that these funds were allocated for the Lot 10 project. These funds were allocated for the Lot 10 project. They were brought to us and approved by two different governors, correct? So,
Hogan and Moore.
So the answer to your question is, this money was earmarked for Lot 10 for infrastructure. We don't know at this juncture whether it's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million for the infrastructure. All we know is what he's estimated for. See, I guess I can say this, it's open meeting, but he submitted it for design, for vertical construction, engineering for vertical construction, which is unrelated to the public works part of the infrastructure. which is where I was having a challenge. So the answer to the question is, we don't know what the costs are yet. If we come up that we have extra money, then we can have that conversation. But we have to have that, we have to make that step first.
So,
So,
go ahead, because I think you're going to ask the same question.
Go ahead.
But it seems like the funds will be spent on, and if we do have to spend money on anything else, we have to go back to the state. So I'm wondering why we haven't began the process on starting.
I've been the mayor for 11 weeks.
And I've been on council for, yes.
I came on the scene
Yeah.
late, so we
Never
haven't,
seen
I don't
such
think you've
a
even
problem.
been to the Public Works Department to even investigate what needs to be done infrastructure-wise, or have estimates to present that, do you?
If he's going to speak from this, do you want to bring him into the conversation?
I would love to.
Say, I would love to
Set
have
up
Nick
from the-
come up and sit and be able to ask him questions as well.
Nope. Listen, Mr. Taylor, I will ask you to leave if there's another outburst. Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
The question was,
Yeah.
we've on public work. Yes, we've met with DIG, it's been a long process. In getting even to the infrastructure, period, like just getting to the point where you can do it, you have $35,000 in just doing site surveys, you have $35,000 doing traffic surveys. All of these things are like just getting to the infrastructure ability to move a project forward.
Right.
And I think that this, kind of circles back to, this project has been in development.
Well, hang tight.
This is too much.
Can we?
Mr. Taylor, you have a good evening.
Yeah, no.
You need to.
No.
No, you need to get away from.
Hold on, he's fine. Just yeah, but I don't understand. Hold on. Now, so 'cause I think I needed to address this because
Deshaun's the president.
we've had outbursts and I've tolerated them to an nth degree. But what I will not do is have a meeting that is run out of control. And I've had many instances, and I am. This is all. We are all at a limit. Well, we can do things cordially, and to have someone stay in an intimidating manner is not the way we do that, Mr. Taylor. Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize, Mr. Simpson.
Could you move the microphone closer? I
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So I think this just kind of circles back. I think, our main question as developers is like, this has been going on for a long time. This particular parcel has gone out to RFP 3 times over almost more than half of a decade.
Correct.
And as the third request for proposal, we moved forward. We were, in the very beginning, knew that we had to have a grant from the state, worked closely with the state from the day one to go get those funds so it was not a burden on the local taxpayer. And, we're just sitting here, I feel like we're getting retraded, down the road when these funds are critical to making the hotel happen, or it won't happen. I mean, and
Right.
this particular hotel, we've already spent at least $500,000 in good faith working with the city on this original, exhibit that I had emailed to the council, which was also sent to the state. And this was the basis of how they gave us the grant. And to make a long story short, we're sitting here at a point where we're getting tight on deadlines, and we have commitments to Hilton and to moving the project forward with our LDA, and we feel like there's just a bit of a contention here, and we just want to make sure that we're getting the money from the state because it's free to the taxpayer, and the moment that we break ground, we'll pay permit fees that will be equivalent to a house assessment of $250,000 in the city limits, paying taxes for 80 years. That's day one. We'll pay a check back to the city, which is delaying funds that are hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be used for the city in other regards. I guess I just want to make sure that we're not under any false pretenses that if the funding does not go through in its entirety, that project will not go forward.
So what I want to say is I would love for this project to occur. What I'm limited to is, of course, the terms of the, which is why I reached out to DGS directly. And so that's what I'm limited. So I hear where you're coming from. I know what you're saying. We've had that lengthy conversation. I'm just saying that it's an infrastructure, and so we don't have, at this point, a firm cost of what the actual infrastructure costs are at this point.
Well, I think we have a pretty good idea. I mean, just to give you a reference, just the small Ross project was over $1.4 million in just site work. infrastructure, not related to an up. I mean, that is a much smaller site. I don't think people really comprehend the investment in a local economy that is done by local contractors. I know all of the local contractors that would be hired for that infrastructure work, and it's millions of dollars. I mean, in street pipes and everything, we got to bring it all the way back down to Main Street just to get to the proper sewer pipes and everything. I mean, we've done a lot of work on this for years, and I suppose I guess I'm just.
No, I agree with you. And I said, we've done the due diligence, and we can fund infrastructure cost and design related to infrastructure cost. So we're covered there. Some of the things that you have on your budget, I can't fund because they're just not part of the infrastructure part.
And then I think we need to work together to see if there was a reshuffle here, because if this funding is changed or reduced, we will not invest in this project anymore. I cannot in good faith do it because I can't get it over the finish line. I will not have the ability to raise the money for it. This was started from day one at a $6 million grant, and I'm already being asked to do it on 4. And this is free money from the state that we are going to turn down, and I guarantee the representatives of the state will not let you move this elsewhere. They will be very upset about it. They're already upset that I'm taking this long. And I just don't understand the retrade.
Sorry, Mayor.
I mean, listen, like I said, I've been in office for 3 months, so I don't know what their delay has been, but it hasn't been for me. I've been in this thing for 8 weeks of the 12 weeks I've been here, and I'm trying to get it resolved, and I did get a resolution on it. So I don't, where this comes from, this pressure of what I'm holding up. I'm not holding anything up.
So I guess for someone who has been here for longer than that time, can we hear from your professional opinion, Mr. Kitzrow, about this project? So what about the funds? From moving the funds over and about design, et cetera. Have you seen this budget that the mayor is speaking? Okay, so can you give us your direct and unsolicited guidance on this on what is being presented here?
Yeah. I was not part of the DGS conversation the mayor had last week, but I do know in commitments from my mouth specifically, our office, I don't have the records in front of me, but we as a collective committed to the $4 million for this project. The infrastructure is a loose term that was told to us has flexibility within that, which includes all things pre-development, pre-construction, site plans. That was conveyed to Mr. Simpson under the idea that his budget could be spent in that capacity. If there's been a change in that based off of recent conversations, that is new to me, and that was not what was presented to him. So it is this trade, I think, that he is talking about.
Well, let me pause you right there. And that's what I think. So I think, and I would feel more comfortable, I'm not sure about the rest of council, I think we would feel more comfortable being in on that conversation, because if it sounds like, it's just this sudden shift that someone is or whomever this person is from DGS is saying that these funds have to be used for specifically, it has to be for infrastructure and what have you. But if Mr. Kitzrow is saying, and what we believe when we sign this, sign for this grant, that it could be used for pre-div, site work, infrastructure, and all the above, but now it's changed. So can we be in on that conversation with DGS?
Well, what I'll do, listen, as the mayor, I can have the conversation. I don't know, I could put together the letter, I'll give you the letter that she gave me, or she's gonna give me, and you're welcome to follow up with her. But as far as creating another conference call, I already had 2, but I'll give you what she sends back to me. If you wanna follow up with her, you're welcome to. I don't have any problem with that. Listen, again, I want projects to occur downtown. I'm limited, I'm a fiduciary. There have been some due diligence issues within the city in the last half decade or whatever, and it's sort of a repetitive problem. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm a little bit looking around the corner trying to make sure I don't fall into the same trap. And so all I'm trying to do here is do my job and make sure that we're on the right track and that we're not going to get a clawback or our hand slapped in a big way. And I guess you can understand, and you can understand. I know we talked about that,
and I think we want to respect that as council. Again, but I think we're kind of tied because, and again, I have the same tenure as you. There are certain agreements that the city we're already in, that we can't, we don't have the magic eraser to erase history on.
And speaking of that, it is very important for the history of council to understand, even the new mayor and the new council people, that for Lot 10, we did not go to a traditional LDA that we had done in other commitments. We sold the property outright with some strings attached on what type of development it has to be, but we do not own that property. So if this is to fall apart, we do not have the same relationship to that parking lot that we have on other parking lots. So I am concerned on our future use of that space if this project falls apart and that relationship fails. So I just want council to be mindful of the situation we are in too.
And I think that's where we share the sentiment, is that, we want to, and I know you do, Mayor, I just want you to say it.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we do everything in our power
Exactly.
to do. So I guess what Mr. Simpson is asking us, what we invited everyone here, is what timeline, because again, I understand in the construction world, when you, every day this moves forward, and he's been working on this, and he has a lot of time and money invested into this, what can we reasonably expect for this to be moved forward and an agreement to be drafted and us to look at it? What do you, in your reasonable mayor hat, what do you think that can happen?
Yeah, I would think we could do it this week, get a firm understanding of what the parameters are, and that we could sit down with your list and try to figure out how those two meld. Having said that, I think, a full disclosure, we weren't going to have it a part of this conversation because we weren't going to be quite ready. And we kind of had that. We said, let's leave it on there in case we do get the answers we were looking for, which didn't happen. We just didn't get a full response from them. I had to go to a second call. I don't know, I understand it. But anyway, long story is, I think if we don't get it the next day or two, I'd be surprised. And I'll send her another email in the morning and say, listen, we need to get a response so we can go back to council. And I told her that.
Okay.
And then,
okay, yes.
Okay, a couple questions. One, I would like to have the grant resent to the council because, we're dealing with money and there's a big piece of this that's legislative. The mayor single-handedly doesn't, there's a balance to things. He doesn't single-handedly make one decision or another. So we're just gonna look at what the copy, what the grant says. And the DJS contact number, I'd like to have a copy of that tomorrow too.
Okay.
Like whoever you spoke to at DJS and name and number. And I would definitely like to follow up with that to see, from our perspective, to get our perspective and our insight in it.
Well, what I don't want to have her do.
I'm not done
I'm sorry.
speaking.
Okay.
I'm not done speaking. And I also want to ask Ms. Ryan, in fact, if, this has been going on for quite a long time, and deadlines are among us in regards to this project, which we all showed up for. If in fact the mayor is not going to sign off on the grants, I believe I understand the council has a right and a way to sign off on the grants to get them moved, to get them moving.
I've already signed off.
I am not done speaking. I'm asking Ms. Ryan a question. And you know something? I'm not having Mr. Taylor mock me. He needs to go. He needs to go. You're not mocking me. Good night.
I'm not mocking you.
I'm talking about this
Listen.
man here. He needs to go.
I think we all need to take a breather.
This is a mess.
Ms.
Hang tight.
Ryan,
So your question, if I understand.
my question is if Mr. Taylor, the mayor, is not going to forward the grant money that was designed and developed by two different governors for this particular project, for the council who signed off on this, it has everything to do with the legislative matter, approving these types of projects. Is there not a vote from the council to sign off on the actual documentation to move the grants forward,
So,
according to the charter?
this one's not been one that I've worked on real closely, but my understanding of it is that the next step, that the grants have been funded, but that the next step is that there needs to be a subrecipient agreement. And I'm
Yes.
assuming that agreement is the one that you're asking whether or not the council has
Correct.
the authority to sign off on that?
Correct.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
I did not draft it,
So-
but I can certainly let you know.
Okay, that'd be great if you could research that. I think maybe Ashley may have been researching that.
Yeah, I think Heather typically does our subrecipient agreements.
and so she's really familiar with the form. My understanding of it is that the agreements themselves don't change a whole lot. It's more so the exhibits to them that talks about where the money goes and how it's used.
Okay,
But I can find out for you.
okay, thank you.
President Dart, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Councilwoman Blake, I'm missing something here. I don't think I understood that Mayor Taylor has said he wouldn't sign off on this.
I already signed off on it 2 months ago. We actually took the money in. They've already sent the money.
Do you have it? Do you have the agreement, Mr. Simpson? Do you have the agreement of the grants?
You mean the subrecipient? I do not have the subrecipient.
Okay.
So let's lay out the process. So again, bear with me. So the grants are received to the city, and then thereafter, a subrecipient agreement is drafted that details how the grants are to be used by the developer in conjunction with the city. And that's where we are right now. That is how Mr. Simpson and the company is able to use the funds. So the funds are right now in the clouds.
No. So actually, I've signed to accept the grants, and Ms. Bell actually sent the money over last week when we were talking on the phone.
Oh, so we have the money.
The money's been sent out.
Have the money already.
We have the
Now,
check.
having said that, we have to,
So
what's the holdup?
It's sitting right there.
Hank, we need to make sure, I know this, please work with me, folks, that one person is speaking at any time. These microphones are very sensitive. Okay. Mr. Taylor.
yeah, so the next step is to set forth the subrecipient agreement, which not only spells out what it can be funded, but how it's going to be funded, whether you pay first, we pay second, whatever. So yeah, I mean, we're actively in the mix here. In fact, we voted on it not too long ago. I mean, so I've not turned down the grant. I've not.
Yes. So have you kicked off with Heather to start the subrecipient agreement?
I think there's a little bit of a draft started, but we're
Yeah,
trying to
my
get the.
understanding is that there's a draft started because for our subrecipient agreement, a lot of it is standardized.
Great.
The status of it is the exhibit of where the money goes.
Okay.
That has been the holdup.
So it is reasonable that by the April 8th work session, we should be looking at a draft of the subrecipient agreement. That is reasonable.
If we can come to terms on what it's going to be spent on, yeah.
Okay.
Relative to,
I would like to have a copy of that grant. Again, it's been quite a while since we looked at that, to actually see what the terms actually are.
Yeah.
Because I hear that there's a difference between what the grant actually says. So I would like to make sure that we get a copy of that and go from there.
We're using the word grant pretty loosely.
Yeah, it is,
It's got a lot of connotation here. In Ordinance 2839 we refer to it as grant funding, but understanding these were direct pay-go allocations from $3 million in House bills, $3 million from the general legislation, and then another $1 million from the governor's supplemental budget. Because it does not run through a traditional grant process, typically when you get money from the state, you will get an additional grant agreement and you follow those terms. Because this was pay-go funding, we did not have that level of detail required. So what we submitted to the state during our initial application and initial conversation is what we said we would spend the money on. The subrecipient agreement is to then maintain their relationship with the developer that outlines milestones, when disbursements happen, and expectations of the relationship ongoing. So we can get you what has been sent and what has been submitted, but just want to make sure we clear up the grant comments that are there. It's different than some other grants that we've received.
Mr. Kitzrow, that's fantastic, and I appreciate that. What I would make sure that I get a copy of the what the city has sent the state on how they anticipated spending the money.
Okay.
Okay. So it sounds like we know our next steps. Again, April 8th, it looks like we should, given that everything, given the milestones and that we are contacted by the parties at DGS, April 8th, we should be looking at a subrecipient agreement. And again, you all should be in communication between now and then to determine what that looks like. Great. And council will and council will have a draft of the Go ahead.
Just real quick, I want to, a subrecipient agreement that is the current draft that exists includes an exhibit, we're calling it Exhibit B, that details the allocation of the funding. If that funding is less than $4 million, typically when we present an agreement, a subrecipient agreement, an agreement, we internally have agreed to it. The additional, the other party has agreed to those terms too. I'm asking the developer right now, if we presented an agreement that was less than $4 million to the project, are you looking to move forward on that agreement? Would there be something to even present to council on April 8th?
Oh, hold on.
Because I don't want to bringing something to you that is not going to even be considered by the other person is premature, so I just want to make sure we're not wasting everybody's time.
I also want to point out that we sent in a $6 million request to the state, and it was approved in a 3-1 and then a pre-authorization for this year, which has been kicked to the following year, which may or may not come through. At the $4 million, it is razor thin margin. I don't even think we're going to have to get creative on the design of the structure and really get, and maybe some of the, we're going to have to get creative on the design of the structure to make even $4 million work. Like, we're already down the $2 million to start. Hopefully that can come and the wow factor of the conference center and everything that we want this project to be can go through. But no is the quick answer. We can't move forward on this project when we've already laid the groundwork. It's like anybody who's worked in development understands it's like a train leaving the station. Once it's gone, it's so expensive to stop it and then go in a different direction. It just doesn't work. And then all that cost gets added on and it's over. And then I just sell the property and recoup my losses. And we don't have a parking lot and we don't have any good development in the city. That's crazy. We need to figure, I would look forward to working with you to figure this out.
Okay, so the short answer was no.
Thank you.
Anything else that you would like to have detailed?
No, if you guys have
any other questions from council or any other discussion? No? Mr. Simpson, we look forward to it. Mayor, we look forward to that conversation moving forward. And Andy, thank you all. We appreciate that. We have a few comments. Carolyn Woolgamuth.
Again, my name's Carolyn Waldman. I live within the confines of the city, and I'm a city taxpayer. The first mention of a subrecipient agreement was during the first reading of Ordinance 2839 in November. That's the first time that the public heard that word, subrecipient. We didn't know anything about it. You probably, as on the council, knew nothing about it. Then crickets from the city until a bare bones agenda item appeared on this special work session to discuss the Lot 10 subrecipient agreement with no accompanying documentation or data. Even when requested, no materials were provided. So where is the documentation? Grant monies were accepted in November. Mayor Taylor signed it in December. In December. And there was mention of a subrecipient agreement, but no actual document for that. He accepted the grants. The guidance provided were line items in House Bill 200 and House miscellaneous grants, $3 million and $1 million respectively. And the grants were to the mayor and the city of Salisbury for city infrastructure. There was no mention of Lot 10. We have never seen any document that states Lot 10. Where is, all right, you have a grant approval header that specifies Lot 10? Show it to us. Let's back up again. Where is the actual grant document? You had to request money for a grant. You have a grants manager who writes the document. I spent most of my life in documentation for the county, the state, and the federal government. And let me tell you, governments live or die by documentation. It is to be written, not just, Mr. Kitzrow told Mr. Simpson this and Mr. Taylor said that. No, it's got to be written. We need to see those documents. Unless you can show the public that you asked for a grant for $4 million or $3 million and $1 million, however you did it, if you asked for grant money, then you have a document that you sent to the state requesting it. We need to see that. Where was Lot 10 specified in that document? If it wasn't there, it doesn't need to go to Lot 10. If you don't show us the document, then you need to stop giving all this money to a developer. This developer is getting enough money from the Horizon program. I don't know if he applied for the Heroes Home, but he's been applying for lots of things. He got the actual lot for well under its appraised value, so that was a giveaway as well. So until you can show me, and I'd asked for this when the first document was read to the council in November, Ordinance 2839. I saw that one sentence in there talking about a subrecipient agreement, and I asked about it then, and I asked about it during the second reading, and I opposed it when we were ready to sign it, because we have not seen it. We have not seen that actual grant request. You all are talking about a document from DGS telling you that you can put the money into PAYGO and you can put it into other things.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkins.
That's after the fact. You need to go back to the beginning.
Thank you, Robert Taylor.
Hello again, still a Salisbury resident. Deja vu all over again. We keep hearing, oh, if you don't give me this, if I don't get this money, we can't do this project. Simpson said the same thing about the Ross. A month later, after they gave him the Horizon program, he sold a 51% interest in it for, I think, more, at least in my estimation, than what they already had in the project. They still have, I assume, a 49% interest. Here we are, same thing all over again. If I don't get this $4 million kitty from the state, I'm going to take my marbles and go home. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if he doesn't get the $4 million from the state, and we don't get the $4 million, we're better off. Let's look at the Ross, for example. I represented the developer of University Orchard, another student housing, fairly high-end student housing project. They didn't get any Horizon program. They didn't get any cuts from the city on their connection costs. In fact, they paid over $1 million to improve Division Street. The city demanded that, and they paid it. Look at the difference. Now they're competitors. These guys don't have to pay any property tax. They do. Anybody that's familiar with rental in a project like that knows that your property tax is 10, 15% of your operating cost. Now, you give somebody a break like that, and guess who's going to win? The only problem is they're not winning is because it's a lousy location for Salisbury University, and that's been obvious from the get-go. So here we are with another deal. We want the money. We can't do this hotel project. Well, there are plenty of hotels in Salisbury. They don't get tax breaks. They've paid the cost to develop their project. How is this fair? If we don't get the $4 million, we'll be the better off for it, frankly, if it goes to them. And incidentally, Mr. Kitzrow, you said you've been here for 5 years. I've been kicking around for 50 years doing stuff like this. And I could take you this afternoon and show you plenty of infrastructure where we could spend $4 million to improve it. And if you don't know that, you shouldn't have your job. Thank you.
Nathan Cox. I do want to remind that the comments should be should pertain to the Lot 10 subrecipient agreement.
This might sound like it doesn't pertain, but it technically does because Lot 10 is currently, or was, a parking lot. And we have no more parking lots as far as I'm seeing in downtown. If you do not have a credit card and you only use cash, you can't use the parking garage. Unity Square took away a parking lot. The parking lot next to it is supposed to be a commercial building sometime in the future. And where Lot 10 is I think it's supposed to be a hotel, no more parking lot there. And I'm thinking, I've explored 50 different towns, cities, and communities all over Delmarva, including Dover, and I'm utterly astounded that Salisbury is the only place that we don't have year-round, when we do have year-round pay-to-park parking. The only place in all of Delmarva. I'm like, even Dover. I'm like, what's up with that? And now, we don't even have that parking lot. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that I have nothing against hotels, yet another hotel, why not? But as they say in real estate, the biggest thing is location, location, location. If we need a new hotel, what's wrong with where the old Salisbury Mall is? So much space there, and it's right next to the Civic Center. Fantastic place, if you ask me, probably, for a hotel where people can just walk right over to any huge events that are happening at the Civic Center. And it's an empty lot that's been empty for over a decade. No one's doing anything with it. But instead, we're going to just take another parking space away. That's my concern when it comes to the hotel. Sure, the hotel monies that are supposed to be going could definitely go better to any kind of infrastructure, including, once again, flooding or anything like that. But nonetheless, sure, let's have another hotel, but just not downtown, where there's already another hotel there, probably one over there. What's wrong with La Quinta? It's still a nice hotel downtown. That's my thoughts on that. Let's put some parking there. Thanks.
Lynn Bratton.
Thrilled to have my wig back on today. I just have a question from the very beginning when I first got here. Lynn Bratton, South Boulevard, Salisbury, Maryland. At the very beginning, when Mayor Taylor started to speak, I'm sitting here just listening, and I felt as though what he was trying to do is look at the rules that govern the use of the money that we have gotten from the state. That he's trying to look at the way those rules are written and to look at the way they mesh with the proposed budget from the developer. That's what I heard. And then I heard everybody start yelling at everybody. I felt like Mr. Taylor was just trying to do his fiduciary job and make sure that what he did, he wasn't going to be found liable for in another 5 years or 2 years. That he was simply, the old term CYA, he was trying to make sure that he understood the rules that were governing the money and that that money was then going to be utilized by the developer according to those guidelines so that none of us, citizens, folks that work around this table that are elected, that none of us ended up having to pay dear for something that was done incorrectly. And I don't quite know why all the yelling and screaming had to happen and the threats of if you don't do this and if we don't do that and where are we going to go and we won't do this and so forth and so on. I don't think that's the way that conversation started. What I heard at the very beginning, and maybe I missed a lot because but I've been here for this whole part. I just felt like all he was trying to do was the job we elected to have done. And that was to make sure it was done correctly. Not that he was trying to pull rugs out from anybody, not that he was trying to taint anything, but then I feel like maybe there was more to the agreements that we didn't know about, And that's why all of a sudden everybody's upset about him questioning some of it. And again, I don't know any of that part, but for some reason, actions have reasons. The fact that everybody got so hyper about everything so quickly makes me question what else is there that maybe we don't know. And I simply wanted to give kudos to Mr. Taylor for asking the due diligence questions of the state to make sure that none of us, none of you, none of us, none of the developers, nobody uses the money incorrectly, and we end up in trouble. He just wants to do it right. So let's take some time and make sure we get it right, folks. And everybody have a kumbaya moment here and just breathe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other public comments? No other comments from council on the next topic? Next topic, correct? On the next topic? On this one?
Round two?
But I think it's on the next topic. Oh, you have one on this one as well? Sure, okay, all right.
Molly Hilligoss, Habitat for Humanity of Wycomico County. And this comment is for the public. When it comes to applying for these large capital grants, and being a subrecipient, we have been a subrecipient to Wycomico County in the past for rental assistance, so I'm very familiar with how the documentation is intense. I'm not sure what Mr. Simpson's package looked like that he sent to the state, but the ones that I've sent to the state, it fills a 5-ring binder. So if the public wants to download, hundreds and hundreds of pages, that is, you should have the Adobe Acrobat. I'm just going to tell you right now, because it is a lot.
Yes.
And kudos to all of you for being able to get $4 million and to get the money already in your freaking account. At Habitat, we have to spend the money first,
Yes.
and then we have to ask for a request for reimbursement. I am still waiting a year later from the state for monies that we spent to build 4 houses. Okay, so the fact that you have $4 million in your account, way to go.
Thank you. All right. No other public comments? Okay. Moving on to the next and last portion of our special meeting. I just thought it'd be great and nice for us to have a council discussion, but also bring in administration. We've heard a lot of comments and buzz about unhoused. We've heard some today, actually from Ms. Hilligroves about the fair housing. So I think it's necessary, and I want to get some information from Mr. Kitcher on how we get that process started, on a housing task force in our city, and then once we talk about the how, and then I guess talk about the what that housing task force kind of will look like. So again, this is very general. I'm looking for council discussion, but I've heard a lot of buzz, and I feel like it's our due diligence to have this conversation now versus later.
I'll start with an asterisk, again, if we want to do this. So typically, when there is a task force and/or committee would be typically a mayor's appointed a committee. We go through a whole process. A task force, you can have nominations, you build a task force, and they are charged with a very specific mission, and typically that task force will end with some sort of recommendation, policy, guideline, something that is then presented to council for adoption or consideration. We've done a couple environmental task force. We did another criminal justice reform task force. We've done a couple of them recently. Depending on the topic and depending on the scope of what you are asking for from the public, you would then drill down on how many people you want to be involved in and what that breakdown looks like, and that would be a discussion that we have typically managed as an administration by helping solicit those people, and then the task force, we can recommend those individuals to you all, or it can be something that is an internal piece. I'm not sure, since I've been here, if the council has created a task force independent of administration.
Oh, no, this wasn't something that,
Okay.
I just thought that we, the
Yep.
city, so I wasn't, this was something we.
Yeah, so if it is something like housing is a big conversation, affordable housing is a big conversation, housing the homeless. So I think the more specific we have, unless it is a broader topic that then has more subcommittees, and then you drill down from there. If that is the initial interest meeting is, what do we want to talk about? I think there's been some things brought up today and recently that could be topics of discussion.
Okay.
The final piece would be determining the length of time that you would want to meet. You could have a conversation in perpetuity forever, or you could say, let's try to come to some resolution within the next 6 months, and you create some recurring schedule. But I think we start with the outcomes, or the intended outcomes that we want, and what we are hoping to achieve, and kind of work backwards to who should be involved, and how we should undertake that. So that's kind of more the framework. Plug and play what topic you want in there, whether it's housing or some other category.
Sure. So I guess before, again, Mayor, would this be something that you would deem as, would you want to have a mayor's committee, or I guess, and Andy, do you think a task force would be much more suitable for something like this in this magnitude?
Well, a couple of things. One, I was one of the founding members of SNHS back in the day. I was on our board for 15 years. I'm involved in housing every day, rehabbing what I do. I definitely think there's a housing issue. I think Greater Salisbury is already talking about doing something along those lines.
They do.
I hadn't heard anything about a task force, but conceptually, I'm not opposed to it. But it's the first I've heard of it. I'd have to think about it, really, to be honest with you.
I think it'd be a great idea.
I agree. Likewise.
Yeah, the Greater Salisbury Committee, Mayor Taylor is starting a housing task force. They're developing it. They found a chair for it. I'm sure they'll announce it themselves. And I'm hoping that they will be talking about it and getting that started probably by the end of spring or into summer. It would be great to maybe merge or have even city representatives on the task force. We've got, it sounds like we have a task force here and a task force there and a task force there. I think it would be great to reach out to Molly, I think we just really look at combining the effort and having more perspectives with the housing, including asking Salisbury Neighborhood Housing about their task force, what kind of things they're doing, and get a member from there and do more of an integration of it instead of being maybe just a city committee, reaching out to the other agencies and people in the community that already are developing or have standing task force.
I think that's again, I think a lot of us are doing the smaller work, but I definitely, my one is I want the city to support this, and I want us to have a part in that. I agree. We have, with unhoused persons as well as affordability, and, again, there's three different, big sections, but I think it's something that, I don't want us to sit on this for any bit of too long. So if we are going to join forces, is this something that?
I actually agree. We need it. We have every other committee and commission here, but we have nothing to do with fair and affordable housing. And that is definitely what we need. With, like you said, President, we have a major crisis here, a housing crisis, and this should be one of our goals to make sure that we are supplying and demand with these housing projects. I mean, we got $4 million, and I'm not saying anything bad about it. We have $4 million set aside for a conference center and a hotel. But here we have people here who can't afford to live. Can't afford their housing.
Yeah. We do have River Mitch in the pipeline.
Yeah, but you have, how many people do River Mitch?
Well, the housing for Mitchell Landing, how many families would that be when they totally rehab that and rehab
24.
The house? Okay, 24
yeah,
families.
24 families, but that.
Well, it's better than the 6 or 7 they have now. Plus they have.
It's better, but
plus we
could do better. We could do better.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I totally agree.
I like the idea of having a task force, having served on the environmental task force back when that was formed. It is a unique setup compared to what we have traditionally with our committees. It is usually not a permanent thing. This is something that has a destination, not a recurring theme. So we need to have a discussion as to what we want. Do we want a task force? And from that task force, create a committee or something like that, that would be more long-standing? I think that's a discussion we should have as well.
There's one public comment for this once we wrap up. Amber Green wanted to comment on this too, so just before we're done.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd like to spend a little time talking to Molly and maybe to Cheryl Meadows and see what their take is on some sort of a formalized task force for the city.
Yeah. I know Holly does have a, okay, so if you want to make sure we give the comments to the clerk so she knows, but I know that we have Molly that is due up for public comment as well. There you are. Thank you.
For anyone joining, Molly Hilligoss, Habitat for Humanity of Wycomico County. So I concur, this is a fantastic idea. I would like to let you know, Council, that the City of Salisbury has already paid for a consultant to do the analysis. There's two different analysis. The analysis of impediments to fair housing has the key findings and the data, and then the 5-year consolidated plan already has the goals and the strategies identified. There were, I think, 493 comments from the public already. I mean, there's tons of data in there. What is needed, I believe, is a well-defined action plan with accountability and dollars allocated, people assigned with achievable deadlines. Accountability and money. And sign me up.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You heard
Molly.
it here
Yes.
first. Sign her up.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you, Molly.
I do want to respect, I think, yes. Amber Green, we'll take your public comment.
Yes, I definitely wanted to concur that I do believe that the city of Salisbury definitely needs a task force to address housing as well as the unhoused population, but more specifically when it comes to rentals in housing. If everyone is familiar with fair market rents, there's a large percentage of properties within the city of Salisbury and within Wycomico County that is higher than fair market rent, and that is leaving a lot of agencies who provide resources to the unhoused population as well as those seeking housing unable to actually get into housing. We have countless numbers of Section 8 vouchers that are outside, that are in the community that are not being used because we have landlords and property managers who are requiring Section 8 voucher holders to still make 3 times the rent or have a credit score of over 600. And that is posing an issue. In the email that I had sent earlier today, I did outline some definite solutions and action steps that the city could do. My advice would be to bring in the Human Rights Advisory chairperson as well as myself, the chair for the Truth Committee, to put together a general recommendation from both of our committees to send to the mayor's office. I believe the public, the community should be the ones to kind of formate this. I don't think it needs to be merged in with any other task force. I think it needs to be specific with the city. And so I would definitely advise or try to recommend that the chair for the Human Rights Advisory Committee as well as the chair myself for the Truth Committee come together and make a formal recommendation of what that task force should look like, much like what the Human Rights Advisory Committee did when recommending the Lynching Memorial Task Force.
Great. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Ms. Vaughn Siggers.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Vaughn Siggers, City of Salisbury. I would just like to ask that you would take into consideration, I totally agree with the Housing Task Force. I don't particularly agree with merging it with Greater Salisbury Committee. It is an entity in and of itself, probably a very different focus than what the community or the residential aspect would be. I would hope that you would consider the independent merits of an organization as a Housing Task Force independent of the Greater Salisbury Committee. Perhaps can make recommendations, but I hope that you will retain that in the mayor's office or however you choose to organize it, but independently, I hope. of the Greater Salisbury Committee.
Thank you. All right. We appreciate all the public comments. We thank you, everyone. And at this time, this meeting is now adjourned.